on my left is Rob Onefrau, who's the head of sales and origination at Swiss Re Life Health. And next to me, part of our host group, is Kevin Gort, who's the CTO of Instander. And to the far right is Patrice Aman, who's the EMEA regional business lead for financial services. So thank you all. We have to start in the industry rather than people talk about the industry that they're not in. And you're at the coalface, Rob, at least you're in the reinsurance. There's no way in the world that we would ever say in insurance that we lack for data, but we don't make optimal use of it. I don't think I'm being very controversial with that. Is the problem that we can't get it because it's locked up in legacy systems or something, or is the problem that we can get it but we don't know what to do with it?
Thanks, Robin. I'd say both statements are relevant to the industry and reflect where we've been for the last 10 years, whether it's a life and health, P&C, insurer, advisor. What I would say is that what we've seen over the last couple of years is the huge investment now to challenge those two statements. And we're seeing insurers and distributors invest in new platforms, utilizing those platforms to manage their data better. And from that data, and as Tim mentioned in his fireside chat, start using that data to customize and personalize journeys and move away from where our industry was for the last 30 years, where it was a one-size-fits-all. We're not all the same. We all have different needs, but we're putting you through the same journey. And what the new platforms and the data does, it allows us to be personal, customizable for each individual. And more importantly, from a reinsurance perspective, it means that we're giving more insurance to many. And more importantly, we're making the world more resilient, whether it's from a GI perspective, from a life perspective, or from a health perspective.
Kevin, you've spent most of your career in the retail or the general insurance, and I can't help thinking as a sort of specialty man that much of what we're doing at this point is learning from what's already happened in retail. If you look at what you've been doing the last 10 years, what have we learned that we're putting into place? Because retail insurance leads the way on this stuff.
Yeah, thank you. If you look at personal lines, then it's dominated by data enrichment. You would literally get actively selected against if you don't credit score, if you don't look up anything related to the address or property or the vehicle that you're looking to insure. So it's interesting, we would often like chat out. Within the same organisation, you've got people who are at the forefront of that in personal lines, and yet in the commercial line space, it's still, we're still going to look things up by the postcode rather than UPRN or something like that. So I think that we are seeing that change, but within the single organisations, we're seeing that people need to learn from where they're being very successful in personal lines and moving that into the commercial lines or the health space.
I think that's a big trend, frankly. Patrice, you're going to say, because you're from Microsoft, that it's not a technology problem, or that you've got a tool for everything.
Yeah, so first, thanks for mentioning it. So we are not an insurer, not a broker, no intent to enter into this business, except supporting and be an enabler. So our aim is to empower others to achieve more. So back to the problem of data and digital transformation as a whole. I think the equation is more complex than just technology. It has to do with people, it has to do with process, and it has to do finally with technology. On the people side, people might need to transform. So we gotta see a massive transformation towards a data culture. Back to what has been mentioned so far. And people have to enter into that with a growth mindset. So we have to understand that the world is changing and you have to cope with new realities. Then it comes to process, and this is also something that is key because traditional process, you can always digitize traditional process. It doesn't change the game. So it's not because you had a signature on paper that tomorrow when you sign a PDF, it might change. Your PDF might finally end up as paper at the end of the day. I think insurer will have to go for new digital operating model. It always has to do with operating model. Super. new digital operating model will be supported by a strong data estate or data infrastructure, where you have to ingest data in a safe way. You have to store it, you have to enhance it, you have to clean it, you have to classify it in order to take action and finally decision. So this is the process piece. And of course, technology will support this whole thing. When you have to kind of cope with this massive amount of data and massive amount of compute, today we're not still at quantum, but it comes. This is where technology enters in play. So some companies might try to do that at scale in their own data centers. Some others might try to build cloud architecture in their own data centers. Some might think a little bit more aggressively going into using public cloud services. And public cloud services is probably something to consider when you look into economies of scale, economies of innovation through agility, and finally sustainable development.
So that's how it's done. Okay, so once you've got all his kit, you learn everything that Kevin's told you comes from retail. What do you then do? What's Swiss Re focusing on? What should insurers be focusing on if they get the fundamentals right?
So I think there's two approaches. For me, there's the breadth and the depth. So Patrice talked about the breadth, and it's creating that ecosystem that manages the policyholder from cradle to grave and providing that streamlined effort with minimal human interaction, digital, and giving choice to the consumer. But for the insurer, there's also the element of the depth and focusing in particular key areas where there can be real efficiency benefits, take cost out of the business, and enhance the customer journey for the policyholder and for the advisor. So one of the areas that we've spent the last 15 years on is enhancing underwriting. We've gone from paper manuals to an online rules engine that has continued to evolve. The next evolution where insurers have been focusing on is how can we use AI to speed up part of the process after that initial assessment. So we're using AI now to read medical reports in seconds that would have taken an underwriter hours to read. The next evolution of that is how do you take second level evidence into the environment and use the underwriting rules engine to assess that information. So for me, it's the breadth and depth argument. Underwriting has had the love for the last 15 years. I think for the next 5 years, we'll see that love move to claims automation. And it's time that we're here to be there for a person in time of their need. But we still have a very antiquated claims process. So that's very much a process that needs to reflect how people want to notify us of a loss.
Right, you can see it creeping in the investment world too. You're the only one brave enough to answer this question. I'll ask it to you anyway.
There's a shock.
There's a lot of talk about personalization. There's a lot of talk about, using data better to understand the customer journeys and so on. It isn't the fundamental problem at the moment that there is somebody in so many cases between the insurer and the end customer. And I mean, at some level, it's comparison sites, but then you could have But in the world, in life and health, so much of what Rob's trying to do, and his organisation has an IFA in the middle. In our broker world that I operate in most of the time, somebody sits between you and the end customer, and that makes what we're talking about now fundamentally what it's called.
It is. I mean, over the last 15 years in the UK, we've been taught to buy insurance and on a personal line space from opera singers and meerkats rather than insurers, and so the insurers themselves. I think, we're disenfranchised in that process because it was a race to the bottom. And therefore you've lost complete control and people have that ratio. I mean, my own mother wanted the meerkat for Christmas once. I mean, tried to explain it was an advert for a insurance aggregator, but she didn't get it. So we're in this market. How do, Microsoft are enabling us and Amazon are enabling us to get a better customer experience. But if you take Amazon, they started out collecting the data. They were well known for we're going to collect the data. We have no idea what we're going to do with this data, but we're going to collect it anyway. Because at some point in the future, someone will work out what we're going to do with it. Whereas in the insurance space, what we've done is Let's work out why we need the data, and then let's see how we're going to collect it, rather than turn it on its head. So I think it is an issue for our industries. How do we enable that customer-centric processing or journeys in an intermediated space? And we often talk about the consumer. I think it's also really important for businesses buying insurance. It's like, you know, that at the end of the day, there's still an individual there. How do we give that them, and how do we give the tools to the brokers or to the, you know, into the intermediaries that are sitting there to allow them to enable the journey? But I think that's the next bit for our industry. Is you can have a great customer experience, you can have a great claims experience, but if their experience with the broker and the intermediary isn't good, you're likely to lose that business. And we're not all set up to do direct. We don't all do direct insurance. So we've got to solve that. And I think that's a whole financial services issue. It's not just, I did a couple of years of banking. It was equally the problem in banking is how do you create that experience? And how do you get the point where the insurers or the banks are happily working side by side with the brokers in order to provide that end-to-end seamless service to ultimately the customer. And if the customer's happy, everyone benefits.
It has to do with fluidity with data.
Exactly. And it's like, you know, I mean, there was a thing with, I forget her name, but this CEO of Starling Bank talked about why open banking had failed. Now, I came from a world where, you know, open banking, the brokers would collect the statements from the customer, but then the risk officer and the insurer said, no, I want to see the paper statement. It's like, how is that good for everyone's thinking about what we need, not what the customer needs.
And everybody has its own kind of analysis on open banking.
Yeah.
It's, you know, one on just ticking the box because this is a regulatory topic. Others, you'll think a little bit forward. Hey, there's an opportunity. Let's see if I can take advantage, potentially monetize or create ecosystems. So you're all the laggers or the leaders.
Yeah.
But we can't have this conversation without talking about regulation. So talk to a Microsoft man, you will have your own issues around regulation at several different levels. So we've got regulation of AI, then we've got regulation of the industry. Does that stop us being as good as this as we would like, or is it just an excuse?
Meaning you have to cope with rules. So you mentioned industry regulation, solvency, meaning this is, you know, for you professionals. You have to cope with that, and there is no way to kind of escape. You're not complying, you get fined, and we see tons of fines happening all over the world for different reasons. So it's a serious thing. Industry is dealing also with privacy. So GDPR is something that is serious, and we're glad to have taken that broader than just Europe. It has started in Europe, as you know. So this is serious, meaning we cannot fail. And as you are kind of working now with cloud providers, as you know, AWS, GCP, meaning it becomes our responsibility to make sure that you don't have data breaches. So this is also a key point. And then when it comes to staying in control in what you do, I mean professionals. DORA is around the ways, even more than around the corner. It has been enforced, and the full enforcement will happen next year, January. This is where us as a CSP might become potentially regulated, meaning we are preparing ourselves to get regulated. And I think this might be a good news for the industry. Having a partner that cannot fail is a good way to kind of use different ways and get out of comfort zone and really take advantage of what regulation can bring. But this is only a part of the fluidity of data, because legacy more than regulation holds back on the innovation that could happen. And finally, security as a whole becomes a big topic for us as well as CSPs, and whatever we do, or AWS or GCP or others, it becomes a big problem that we have to tackle.
When I was preparing you for this, I said you couldn't use any acronyms. And
AWS is an acronym.
Yeah.
GCP, so Amazon Web Services.
I've got that.
Google Cloud Platform.
DORA.
Get it. DORA. Digital Operation Resiliency Act.
Thank you.
Sorry for that.
Yeah.
My bad.
Let's get on with the good stuff. We have done some things. You've been at this, a while. What would you point to if you said, look, you've got to believe it was worse 10 years ago. These are the things we have done.
I mean, it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? I mean, 10 years ago, we didn't have platforms like a stand-up, got a plugin, but, we didn't have access to, everyone went, 5 years ago, they're like, well, I'll put a bit of dev and test in the cloud, but I'm not going to put production services in there. Now it's like everything, I want SaaS. And if it's not running in a cloud I've heard of, I don't want it. There is massive transformation going on. The products that people are able to bring to market are incredible compared with what they were, literally a couple of years ago. The ability to be innovative and agile is massively transformed in the last few years. I kind of a bit of a plug for us, but we've got clients who take our platform, do a bit of training, and then launch products within a couple of weeks, and then a year later have got 50 products on the platform. There's not been a single IT implementation as part of that. That is unheard of if we went back 2 to 3 years ago. And then the access to data, the access to a wider, broader markets is incredible. So, Tim talked about, the acceleration that's going on, and while we're thinking about, where AI is going to come in, but the industry is accelerating. We are seeing things come down and barriers, and we kind of often get trapped into this grumpy, it's never going to change. But in reality, lots of things have changed in a very short space of time. And we should celebrate that, make sure it's nice and safe, and then move forward.
It's about risk and versus opportunity. It depends where you put the cursor.
Yeah.
There is no zero risk, but in own data centers, customers don't have a zero risk neither. So are you willing to tackle or access to the opportunity where you put the cursor? And we see very much now at board level, conversation going down to our control function. Say, guys, I know we have regulation, we have, to manage our own kind of risk control function, but find a way to make it happen. Because I foresee the opportunity, I want to catch this opportunity.
So the cold face.
So
What's Swiss Re doing now that it wasn't doing 10 years ago? Because you've got to do some models and analytics and all kinds of weird things.
I'll put Swiss Re to one side for a moment. The one thing I'd say that we should be proud about our industry, 10 years ago, we thought we were going to be swamped by disruptors coming into the market. In fact, it's actually the existing players, insurers, reinsurers that are disrupting the market. So I think we're hard on ourselves, and we don't actually give us credit to actually wanting to change. I think over the last 10 years, you speak to insurers now, the first thing they will say is their data is gold. And I've never heard that before. So I think people are starting to realize the potential that we have with both internal and utilizing external data from different third parties. For me, I think we've seen a lot of innovation come through. I think we're hard on ourselves, but we are seeing the ripple effect from other segments really now having a positive impact in insurance. And we are starting to think more about the end consumer rather than what we want as an insurance company or as a reinsurer. And I think I refer to it as the Venn diagram. You're seeing now a more of a collaborative approach between insurer, and distributor, and working together to, as I said at the start earlier, creating that cradle to grave journey that provides that additional environment that allows the consumer to have choice. We talked about claims automation. You said what Swiss Re have done. We've launched our claims automation tool. The feedback we got from users is that they've been able to submit their claim late at night. They've got rid of their day-to-day stuff. They've managed to get peace and quiet. The kids have gone to bed, and they can sit down and give their claims notification at 10 o'clock at night. We've never done that historically. We've made people fit in this particular bucket. So I think the real innovation that I've seen is that we are embracing the change. My one caveat that I would have is this perpetual motion is speeding up. And I know Tim mentioned it. I do have nervousness that we'll jump from one new thing to the next new thing without putting the parameters in place to make sure we've got the framework correct. So we've talked about Gen AI already. I would still say that with narrow AI, we still haven't got that completely sorted and fixed and ensure that the trained data that we're using, we truly understand it and we're using it to its fullest potential. And that's my just nervousness that we've gone from being very slow to now trying to move too fast, and we're going to potentially cause problems in the future. So I think we need to be a bit more structured, embrace the change, but make sure that we're doing it in a structured and positive way.
And presumably, you've got a lot of you build models over time. So you've got propensity models, you've got it, but those are all built now on data sets that you've accumulated over long periods of time, but lots of experience, lots of... How does that change the way you are working, or how does it improve the way you're underwriting?
So historically, we've been in our individual silos. So Swiss Re are now working with its clients, sharing our models and utilizing the client's models. So we're combining, we're sharing. We have data sets, they have data sets. We're merging them together to give better insight, to ultimately benefit the end customer. So what innovation has done over the last 15 years is actually brought us all closer together, and from being in our individual silos, knocking down those walls. So we're more collaborative and we're sharing more. And propensity modeling is a great phrase because everyone's been saying it for many years.
Yeah.
But I think we're now understanding more around propensity modeling across the whole value chain, from lapse to propensity to bind, to convert, etc., etc. And that insight is just creating this ongoing dialogue between insurer, reinsurer, and distributor.
Now, if you're me, you can't miss the chance of talking about generative AI with someone from Microsoft, because normally we just talk amongst ourselves and we don't actually have anyone from Microsoft here. So how's that going to... Tim gave his views. How in your mind is that going to change anything? And what are the problems that we've just spent the last 10 minutes talking about does that solve?
Gen AI, you mean? Never heard about that. So of course, it's in all our conversation, from war to line of business to IT to customers to partners. It's all about Gen AI and what Gen AI can enable. So yes, it is a game changer, and it is a game changer because it brings what AI or classical AI could not bring so far. The first thing is it's accessible. It's the first time that people cope with AI in their hands, on their handy. And think about ChatGPT. The adoption of ChatGPT, up to 100 million users, 2 months. Fastest adoption worldwide, faster than all other tools you might think about. So it's easy, it's relevant, it's personalized, it's contextualized. It brings all pieces of AI together to unlock new use cases or use cases you could not tackle before. It helps explain, it helps understand, and it creates. This is something very new. So knowing that, of course, there is a lot of excitement about what we can do with Gen AI. And we always think about AI or Gen AI as augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence, which means that it helps others to do different or to do more or to be more relevant, to be more personalized. So this is a key point that actually we have been launching a whole set of copilots. So one, we infuse AI in all what we do. And we came with this concept of copilot, which is not an autopilot. It sits on your side. It helps you doing better. We do it for our own products. We see partners starting to build copilot in their offering. So imagine a copilot for claims management, a copilot for underwriting. So this is the direction. But I want also to say that there is no magic. And back to the data conversation, there is no great AI if you don't have great data. So the data estate is absolutely key. And sometimes, at board level, there is a lot of excitement going down to ITs. Hey guys, meaning, where is my system, my new kind of application? Yeah, but if the data estate or infrastructure is not in place, you cannot achieve magic. So this is one point. The second point is, be careful with the decision, because eventually Copilot might be wrong. We saw a couple of things on biases, and you have to understand that. So don't always take everything as granted, meaning it's a Copilot. It doesn't guide you. And actually, back to the regulatory conversation, I was sitting in a couple of discussion with regulators, and regulators were talking to a financial institution, say, hey guys, don't come up to us having messed up and say, no, it's my fault. It's not my fault. It was this kind of black box I was using. Everybody needs to stay in control. So data can bias models that can bring false response. So this is absolutely clear. So it all has to do with stay in control in what you do. So implement also the whole notion of ethical AI. Our president wrote a couple of years ago a book called Tools and Weapons. And AI or Gen AI might be a great tool. It might potentially be also a weapon, depending on how you might use it or misuse it. So these are the kind of things that guide us. But the future is bright. But we have to kind of take care about doing the right things in an ethical way, transparent way, secured way, inclusive way, accessible way. And I think all us are working on that topic.
Good man. Thank you.
Hi. I hope it's going to be on a positive note. So Daniel Ginga, Ancora, and his stand-up partner. So I do agree that digital transformation is very expensive. And we might call it actually business transformation or actually organization transformation. But it's not necessarily a question, but it's more like, can we really afford not to spend that amount of money on technology? Because I guess it could be really those figures, maybe that 2% doesn't mean too much. But if Swiss Re, for example, they didn't spend that amounts of money in technology, would they have been here today? Because indeed, some of the probably investments are not going to be on the ROI seems very positive. But we are learning something as organizations, as companies. And sometimes you cannot afford actually not to spend those money. Of course, we should be keen and look at the people, but organizations are changing, and I would say changing people is really expensive, and the technology is the easiest part in the process. So it's more like a thought, I don't know, where Swiss Re would have been without those investments. I guess the 2%, I don't know. Thank you.
Go on.
Do I need to finish on a positive
Yes,
note
please.
on the back of
You
that?
have to.
Okay.
You have
So I think, look, as a Swiss Re, we know that we need to be at the forefront of change. We can't talk about change if we're not interacting with that same technology and absorbing it into our industry. I think the one thing I keep saying is the last 2 years have been a very different to what it's been for the last 10 years. So I think we're in this period of change, and I think we'll start embracing those changes. What I would say is historically we've made one change and not looked at the consequences and the knock-on effects onto other processes within the organization, which goes back to then we're not actually taking out the expenses. What I see now when I speak to insurers and distributors, they're making changes but looking at the knock-on effects along the whole process. And I think that once you start connecting all of that, you take out that wastage in inverted commas cost, and then you start bringing those expenses down. So hopefully Swiss Re is doing that. I know we're doing that. If we can share that with insurers, they'll doing that, and distributors will do that. And the benefit will be to the end customer, and they'll be getting a much more competitive price and a product that they can buy in a format and way that suits them. So hopefully that's a positive conclusion for you, Robert.
I had a little yarn of my own to Broderick's point, which is I went to the Bermuda market with a trading platform, and I said, this is exactly what the Bermuda market needs, and who's going to help me implement it? And I said we had a little discussion about how you funded it and so on. And as a game, I said to everybody, write on a piece of paper how long you think it's going to take before the market in Bermuda goes fully digital. And I think any number, it doesn't matter. And they put them on the and do it completely anonymously. And I opened all these things up, but people said 5 years, and I said you're probably about right. Someone did 10 years, and I went good luck with that. And someone put never. But ultimately, when people put 10 years, I went you're in dreamland. This will all be digital by 2010. And then the rest is history. But I mean, we did all think that it was going to happen fast, for sure. Thank you very much. Good stand up, very kind of you.
Great to meet you.
Thank you.